Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Young Mustard is back with another video, and today we're here to talk about one of my favorite players of all time, Kobe Bryant. Over the course of my life, Kobe has been one of the most controversial and polarizing players I have ever come across in professional sports. It really does seem like there's no middle ground when it comes to Kobe. Either you think he's one of the top 3 players of all time, and if he's not in your top 3, you're just ridiculous and you don't know basketball, or you're on the other side of the spectrum that doesn't have him in your top 5, may not even have him in your top 10, and you think he's just completely overrated if otherwise. Now for me, I definitely fall into that rare middle ground when it comes to Kobe Bryant, and in today's video I'm gonna do my best job to clarify why I am in that position, because there are a lot of things about Kobe Bryant that the media runs with, fans run with, and even players themselves run with that I think are just completely untrue. And today we're gonna talk about some of those things. I already addressed one in a recent video, the one where I talked about Kobe Bryant not being the closest thing to Michael Jordan. You guys can check that out. A card should be on the screen right about now. So obviously that one will not be a part of today's video. But before we get started with this video, make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and press that bell for post notifications.
And put us on his back, carried us all the way to a championship, carried us all the way to a championship, carried us all the way to a championship.
This is it, fellas. We work all year long for it, man. Shaq the man, most dominant player in the world.
Now, one myth that is as old as time itself in NBA history has to be the one that Shaq carried Kobe Bryant. It really is kind of crazy how many people still to this day hold the belief that Shaq just carried Kobe. I've even heard some people go as far as to say you could just replace Kobe with any other all-star volume scoring guard in the 2000s, or wing for that matter, and Shaq is still going to three-peat. And when people say that, it just makes me see that you don't really understand the things that Kobe Bryant was asked to do, not only in the playoffs, but also even in the regular season to get there. Kobe's impact as a scorer, defender, and playmaker goes so understated in these conversations. And I think a lot of that falls on 2 things. For one, Kobe played in the dead ball era of not only efficiency, but scoring in general when it comes to the NBA. In 2000, averaging 20 points per game was a lot more valuable than it is today. The weakest performance from Kobe throughout their three-peat postseason runs has to obviously come from 2000. And in the 2000 championship, Kobe was injured, which obviously hurt his stats not only in that series but the playoff run as a whole. As in the first 3 rounds of their Western Conference run, Kobe averaged 23 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds, shooting 46% from the field, 37% from 3, and 74% at the free throw line. And even in that 2000s NBA Finals against the Indiana Pacers, the series that his numbers took a hit because of an injury he sustained throughout it, Kobe in Game 4 to put them up 3-1 that essentially won them the series, fresh off of his ankle injury, scored 28 points along with 5 assists and 4 rebounds, 2 blocks and 1 steal, shot 52% from the field, and in overtime where Shaquille O'Neal fouls out, he closes out the game with 8 points in OT. That playoff run is really the closest thing of evidence that you can point to say Kobe Bryant was quote-unquote carried by Shaq, because after that, even though I would say Shaq was obviously better in 2001 and 2002, that's really when Kobe started to hit his stride not only as a sidekick to Shaquille O'Neal, but one of the top 5 to 10 players in the NBA period. We're talking about seasons in 2001 and 2002 where he's averaging around 25 to 28 points a game, being an elite level perimeter defender, and also contributing as a playmaker on that team, probably the best perimeter one on the roster as well. Then you throw in the fact that there are also series you can find where Kobe is even outplaying Shaq in some of these moments. Like in the Western Conference Finals of 2001 where they swept the San Antonio Spurs, Kobe Bryant was the best player in that series for the Lakers, with averages of 33 points a game, 7 assists and 7 rebounds, along with nearly 2 steals, shooting 51% from the field, 36% from 3, and 77% at the free throw line. Kobe was cooking the San Antonio Spurs, and this is a Spurs team where Tim Duncan was in his prime, a Spurs team that was the best defensive team in the league. Kobe proved numerous times that he was capable of rising to the occasion and even at times outplaying Shaquille O'Neal as the second option. It's obvious that Shaq was the better player, I can concede that point, but to say that Shaq was carrying Kobe, especially after going through the series and moments I just presented, I don't see how anybody with common sense can come to that conclusion unless you have an agenda.
So how do y'all feel about Elder saying Kobe is a better defender than Tim Duncan?
He is. Look how many teams, defensive teams Kobe made.
Tim Duncan made more.
No. I'm saying from his position. You got to remember, Tim Duncan's position is easier to guard than Kobe's position. Kobe Bryant, the guard.
Are you saying it's more difficult to guard on the perimeter than it is in the post?
Yes.
One of the biggest misconceptions in NBA history is represented through how people talk about Kobe Bryant's defense. And that is this idea that guard defenders have the same amount of value as wings or bigs. Basketball is a game of height, and I think a lot of people don't understand that it affects both offense and defense. The easiest and most efficient way of scoring is at the rim, usually obviously with layups. If you have a bad rim protector and people are just basically getting layup lines to finish at the basket, that is a much harder thing to stop and overcome than somebody killing you from behind the arc, or at least attempting to. And I say attempting to because at the end of the day, you could even get open jump shots. The most inconsistent shot in basketball is the jumper. It's easier to have an off night from behind the line or in the mid-range area or the post than having a bad night at the rim, especially when all of them or most of them are open or with very little resistance. That right there is a clear reason why Kobe Bryant as an individual defender cannot be seen as better, more impactful, or more valuable than rim protectors and guys that could defend the interior, help defenders, guys like Draymond Green, Tim Duncan, Giannis, Kevin Garnett, Ben Wallace. I've even seen people go as far as to say that Kobe Bryant is a top 10 defender of all time. And I'm sorry, I completely disagree. I mean, one could make the argument that Kobe's not even a top 5 guard defender ever, much less top 10 defender in the history of basketball. Because I'm gonna be honest, I think that Kobe Bryant's defense is probably the most overrated thing about his legacy. Kobe had some great defensive seasons, don't get me wrong. I think 2002, 2003, that was probably his defensive peak. But later on in his career, when you get to the mid to late 2000s, that's when Kobe starts to slip a little bit on that side of the ball. Off the ball, he was never that disciplined, but later on it gets worse. He becomes a habitual ball watcher. And even on the ball, he just doesn't have that same lateral quickness. You can find numerous examples of him being blown by consistently on the ball and him not showing too much effort off the ball. I'll never go as far as to say that Kobe was a liability, but in a lot of those years that he was making all defensive teams, it was clear that he was getting it based off of reputation as opposed to actual production. Especially when you get into those late 2000s, early 2010s all defensive team selections, that is just nasty. And if you don't want to take my word for it or even the film that I'm showing you, go look at the quote from Phil Jackson himself. Kobe Bryant's own coach talked about Kobe's defense and how it faltered in later years, and he was still making all defensive teams. As he said, and I quote, "Kobe's defense, to be accurate, has faltered in recent years despite his presence on the league all defensive team. The voters have been seduced by his remarkable athleticism and spectacular steals, but he hasn't played sound fundamental defense. Mesmerized by the ball, he gambled too frequently, putting us out of position, forcing rotations that leave a man wide open and doesn't keep his feet on the ground." The reality is that Kobe Bryant is one of the best defenders at his position the league has ever seen. But when you're talking about the best of the best defenders in NBA history, Kobe Bryant does not belong on any top 10 list. Hell, I don't even think he belongs on any top 15 player list. You could even argue a top 20 defender player list. Especially when you're talking about the peak of their impact defensively, Kobe is just not in that conversation for me. But unfortunately, people are mesmerized by the Mamba mentality and the fact that he pulls up his shorts when he full court presses somebody.
To me, LeBron James is one of the greatest players ever played the game, but I don't rank him above Kobe because to me, Kobe Bryant not only had the skills, not only had the athleticism, but he had the assassin mentality. He was a killer on the basketball court in every sense of the word.
Another lie that I hear amongst the NBA community is just how great Kobe Bryant was at his peak. I don't think enough people talk about the real case of Kobe Bryant's greatness on the all-time scale. It really has very little to do with his peak performance as compared to his longevity offensively. Whether you think Kobe Bryant's peak is like 2003 or 2006 or 2008 when he won his first and only MVP, there are plenty of players throughout NBA history that have peaked higher than Kobe Bryant. Guys like LeBron James, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Steph Curry, Hakeem Olajuwon, Larry Bird. I would even go as far as to say guys like Kevin Garnett. Tim Duncan is in that conversation. I think Dwayne Wade is in that conversation with Kobe. But you can disagree on the latter half of the names that I said, but people thinking that Kobe Bryant has this top 5 peak in NBA history, I truly do believe that you're overvaluing his peak and underrating the significance of his longevity. Because if Kobe Bryant were to have, say, retired in 2008 or 2009, I don't think that anybody is putting Kobe Bryant in top 5 discussions. You could even argue in top 10 discussions. But because of his longevity to not only win championships in his later years of early 30s, but to also extend his offensive prime up until around 2012 to 2013, I think that's what really cements him as an all-time great and arguably a top 5 player in NBA history. Not his abilities to showcase his scoring volume in 2006, not because he was such a great second option in 2002, or because he won, in some people's minds, a sympathy MVP in 2008. Kobe's peak is simply overrated by some, plain and simple.
But Kobe was not efficient, Rick. And that is a huge, he shot 44% for his career. He never shot 47% for a season. And that's playing 8 years with Shaq, drawing double and triple teams in his prime.
The final thing that I want to touch on is the whole myth that Kobe Bryant is an inefficient volume scorer. This, along with the other lie about Kobe Bryant being carried by Shaq, is not only one of the biggest lies of Kobe Bryant's career, but it's one of the biggest lies in the history of basketball. I mean, it just started off as a joke when we were younger, people saying that Kobe Bryant's a ball hog, he doesn't pass people the ball. And to a degree, I can understand that. Kobe is not the willing playmaker that other players, not only at his position, but throughout NBA history have been. But Kobe has proven numerous times that he is still one of the best playmakers in the history of the league, not just off of his passing ability, but just how the defense reacts to him with the gravity he has on the court, whether he has or doesn't have the ball. It frees up not only opportunities for his teammates to score, but have opportunities to do it efficiently. But as it pertains to Kobe Bryant's efficiency as a player, the fact that the ball hog narrative has carried over into that one, because those same people can't just grow up and keep the same childish memes of Kobe being a ball hog, it really boggles my mind the lack of context people bring to this conversation about Kobe and his inefficiency. When you're talking about efficiency in basketball or even in football, whatever sport you want to use, you have to use it relative to the era, because things change over time, whether it's rules, whether it's teams, players. The league is never going to be the same forever. It's always going to be split in eras, play styles, and numerous other things. And in Kobe Bryant's era, of the dead ball era to be specific, where there was a lack of spacing, especially compared to the league today, and the pace was also a lot slower, Kobe for a majority of his prime was basically league average, if not even higher than the league average when it came to his true shooting percentage. As you can see with the graphic on this screen, he's even higher in most years when it comes to that statistic. But because people only care about field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, they look at the fact that he shot below 34% from behind the arc and 44% from the field. Well, for starters, those are career numbers. And I mean, I understand you want to use career numbers to represent a career, but you have to look at two things because those numbers still need context. Kobe came into the league as a bench player. He wasn't immediately given that starting spot. And then at the end of his career, the second thing that happened is that he declined rapidly and played a lot of seasons like trash. Post Achilles, Kobe Bryant was definitely an inefficient volume scorer, and that tanked his overall career numbers. And the craziest thing of all is that 44% from the field as a guard is not even that inefficient. I would say that's relatively average. People are acting like he shot Allen Iverson efficiency, for Christ's sake. That is an inefficient volume score, not Kobe Bryant. But then you throw into the fact that Kobe is probably the best tough shot maker in the history of basketball. I mean, we're talking versatility galore when it comes to his tough shot making. In the post, the mid-range area, at the rim, from behind the arc, with his right hand, his left hand, the footwork on point. There isn't a shot that Kobe Bryant cannot take, will not take, cannot make, and will not make. And those are things that don't show up in the stat sheet. And even when you do look at the stat sheet, sheet, it's very clear that Kobe Bryant was not only not an inefficient scorer, but in most cases an efficient one. But that concludes this video. I appreciate all the love that you guys have been showing me over the last couple of months. I could not have reached 87,000 subscribers without y'all. The goal is to hit 100K by the end of the year, so I would appreciate that subscribe button if you press it and that bell for post notifications. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. You guys stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.